This is it. This is it. The podcast, My Road Trips Planner. And my name is Shane. Welcome. If you're looking for a podcast that talks about road trips, you found it right here, right now. All right. About to do some cruising. So, in this episode, I just wanted to talk about some stories on the road. You know, I've been driving on this American road since I was probably, ever since I could drive, 16 and a half, I believe is when I finally got my license at 16 and a half. And I just been driving ever since. I love driving. You know, when people ask me, you know, who wants to drive, I'm like, I'll drive all over the place. It's my favorite form of transportation. It's hands down. Look, I'm not a big fan of the planes. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's nice that you can get somewhere really quick. I also, in another episode, talked about sometimes having a plane ride can get you to a destination. So then you can go ahead and really, you know, rent a car then and enjoy. So like I live in Connecticut. If I decided to fly out to California, that's a 6-hour flight, right? Well, if I decide to drive out there, it's going to take me 3 to 5 days to drive out there. So, and I'm talking about if you do it in 3 days, you're just driving. You're not even sleeping. So, just putting that out there. And so sometimes taking a plane, but for me, I love driving everywhere. Ever since I was 16 and a half, I got to drive. So I've been driving for probably nearly 30 years almost now. So 27, give or take. But for me, it's just fun. There's just something about cruising. Like right now, I'm driving ahead. I'm not going to keep looking in the camera because I'm trying to, you know, drive and just have a conversation with you and just let you know a couple stories. But like I see the horizon in front of me. It's the sun setting. It's beautiful. And I think that's the thing, is that what's really amazing about driving is that you're getting closer to a destination. You know where you're going, you know, like for me, I'm on my way home right now. And I'm just cruising along, just trying to get there and tell you a couple stories. So I remember the first time going to Maine. And I remember getting up to, I believe it was Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is right before Maine. And I had a buddy, he told me, he said, hey, if you're going to go there, you got to go. I can't remember the name of this place, but he's like, if you go, you got to get their burger. I said, all right, I'm going to go get their burger. And so I did. And it was delicious. I don't remember the name of the place, but it was awesome. And so I drove over through Maine. I believe there's a town called Kittery, and then there's Portland, Maine, which is a larger town there. And I remember the last time I really went to Maine was actually with the family years ago. So me and my wife had talked about going whale watching. And so we go to this place, I believe it's I think it's called Odysseys. And so we go over, and it's like a 4-hour boat ride. Now you gotta understand, my oldest son, this is like 5 or 6 years ago, I believe. So my oldest son is probably like 4, maybe 5 or 6. He's between 5 and 6 years old, I believe. And then my youngest is, I believe he's between 1 year and 2, because he could walk, but we still had him in, I want to say between 1 and 2, because we still have him, they call it I say it wrong, it's a bonjour, I think it's called. And you strap your kid to your chest so that you carry them more easily. And so we're out there, and like I had my son Ty strapped to me the whole time, because I knew his footing wasn't going to be as good as Bryce's. So I'm sitting there and I'm just like, man, this is wild. Like, but the boat ride was awesome. The crew was great. They told you if something was coming up. Never got to see a whale, but we got to see, I believe it was a sunfish maybe, but it was a massive fish. and it swims on its side. It was really cool. And so they really enjoyed that. But yeah, so you had to drive out. You sail out for about, I believe, 2 hours. You get there, you see where you are. Usually there's whales there, but there was no whale this time. But we drove back. But what was really awesome is that they give you up to, I believe it's up to 2 to 4 years, that if you don't see a whale, they stamp it, and you have the right to come back, because they literally guarantee that you see a whale, essentially. So that was really awesome. And so Maine has always, for me, been one of those states I haven't traveled a lot to. I've been probably as far as Arcadia National Park, which is one of the most beautiful parks I've ever been to. And I remember hearing about Rockefeller Jr., where he and a bunch of friends got together, and they literally tried. I believe this is one of the first national parks where a lot of people got together and tried to give them property to the national park system so that we could have this park. And there might be other ones too, but I know this Arcadia National Park in Maine, that was a big thing. These, aristocrats giving away, land so it could be protected for other people to see. So Maine's always been fun. Vermont is just one of those states. Oh man, I could hang out in Vermont for weeks. Like, find a new trail, hike a new place. Like, Vermont is just the Green Mountains. I mean, it's just a beautiful place, and I've always enjoyed it. One place I do want to get to and I haven't been to yet is Derby. I believe it's called Derby Line. It is on the border of Canada and America, and so essentially, at one time, the two towns, the Canadian part and the American part, were like one community. But after 9/11, they got stricter, and you can't just like walk over anymore as easily as you used to. But what's really awesome is that, and this is something I want to do one day, is that when you go, there's like a library. It's a multi-use building, like a community building, and if you go inside of it, essentially what happens is that one side is America, and then the other side is Canada. So if you're standing in the middle of the building, you can straddle both countries. You can stand in both countries at the same time. So I always find stuff like that interesting. Like the Four Corners, almost got to go to the Four Corners. That's near where Arizona, I believe, Nevada, Colorado, and New Mexico meet. And we were about to do it, but it was closed at that time. But talking about New Mexico, so New Mexico is one of those states to me that I remember going, I believe, I haven't been to Santa Fe, but I've been to Albuquerque, and I got to go to the old Albuquerque. Beautiful, like the handcraftsmanship of all the people that make stuff is beautiful. And I learned a lot being in New Mexico, and one of the things I learned is that there is different, I think sometimes people assume that Mexican food and New Mexican food is the same, and it's not. And there's a couple little differences. I don't know the differences. I was just told by people that lived in New Mexico, hey, there's a difference. And so there was like a green sauce and a red Vera sauce. Both were really good. I can't tell you the difference right now. I haven't had them in a long time. But what I really loved about New Mexico is that it's very different. So Albuquerque actually gets most of the seasons compared to the rest of the states that are around there. And actually, some of the states actually get it, but it's in the higher elevation. Like if you're in Arizona, if you go down to Phoenix, you're probably, I'm not going to say you never see snow, but it is unlikely you will. But if you go up to Flagstaff, eventually you're going to see snow during the year. And so, but going back to New Mexico, what I really enjoy about New Mexico was when I was driving across country with my buddy, we got to Roswell. And Roswell was really interesting because what I really enjoyed about Roswell is that there is this aura about it. Whether you believe there were aliens or not aliens, there's still an aura. And so all the stores at this time, it was getting late. It was late afternoon, and there was only one store open. So we go over and we start talking to the guy who owns the store. And he was just a little, at this time, this is probably 09. And so we're talking about more than, 15 years ago. And so when we're talking to this guy, he was only a few years older than us. And he said, look, my parents and people who are a little bit older, they really believe that something was here. They believe that something happened. That at that moment in time when the government came into the town of Roswell, they believed that something was here. And they talk about stories about that time. But, he'll say, he's like, I never seen anything, but, the old timers will tell you some stories. But we didn't get to meet anybody who was older than us or him. So we just walked around. There were stores. On my Facebook page, I have photos where we're walking around, and literally just store windows have alien figurines and stuff in there. The McDonald's there is shaped like a UFO. It's just a really cool, and they really the whole town just really feeds into that there might have been aliens here at one time. And so I really find that really interesting. It's really cool. And so New Mexico's always been one of those places I always wanted to go back to. Went to Silver, I believe it's called White Sands National Park in New Mexico. Beautiful. Just you walk in and it was like you're in a whole different world, because it's like the only part of New Mexico that I remember that has white sand, and it is all over the place. So that was really cool to see. But let's stay out in the west and the south. And I remember driving into Las Vegas. I think if you haven't got the opportunity, it is a really interesting thing. So when you're about 50 miles out from Las Vegas, I want you to think about this. It's pitch black outside. It is dark. Darker than it is right now. I know this video is a little bit dark because it is getting darker. It is after 5 o'clock right now, and we are in January. So, but what I really loved that was really cool is that, so again, pretend it's a pitch black. All you see is, it's just you, your car, and you're just driving down this dark road. There's no lights out there, and then all you see is your headlights in front of you. That's it. And you're just driving. You're about 50 miles out, and you see this speck of light out in the distance. And that's all you see is a speck of light. But as you get closer, the light starts to get larger and larger and larger. It's almost like a big, it's almost like a bulb, a light bulb, and it just gets larger and larger and larger. And you get to, now you can drive, you can bypass the Hoover Dam. But when we were coming in, we went over the Hoover Dam, which is really interesting at night. But once you get past there, as you get closer, it's just like the whole sky lights up. So even though 50 miles out, it was pitch black outside, now it's just lit up like the sun rose right in front of you almost. And it is so bright, and it's just a city, and it almost feels like somebody was like, hey, let's put a city next to nothing. I mean, that's what it really feels like when you get to Las Vegas. If you're driving in, it feels like nothing. So just wanted to throw out these couple stories. Again, just talked about Las Vegas. We just talked about New Mexico, Roswell. Talked about Vermont a little bit, and then we started with Maine and Arcadia National Park. These are great places to visit. if you get the opportunity. Hey, thank you for listening. Hope throwing out more of these conversations like this just to tell you some stories from the road, recapping them to you. And hey, the road's open. Let's drive.